Well, hey there, how are you? Hearing an awful lot about millennials this week. Now that the older millennials are in their 30s, the impacts that they're having on the world, American culture, society, industry. While each generation over the last 100 years has had its own quirks and its own impact on the world, millennials, quite frankly, are getting on people's nerves. It's gotten to the point where there's a list published of all of the things that millennials have ruined. I'll admit, I get annoyed sometimes. But I'll admit that sometimes my annoyance comes from like an age-based bias. So I asked the professor back home to kind of help me take a closer look at the generations, because millennials really have been blamed for basically ruining what was once good in the world.
Except it's a complete load of crap. Hey there, how are you? It looks to have started in the 1900s with the greatest generation who fought and lived through World War II. These are the folks that built the American highway system and founded the American middle class. So with no more war to fight, unparalleled peace and prosperity, what else did they have to do with their time? Which gave rise to the aptly named baby boomer generation. These are the folks that brought us rock and roll, hippies, protests, probably the most damaging, corporate America.
Greed is good. Greed is right. Greed works.
Myself and other children of the baby boomers came to be known as Generation X. Gen Xers were the new lost generation. Raised on MTV, responsible for grunge and hip hop, we were the slackers. Which finally brings me to the subject of this video, the millennials. Those born in the 1980s and 90s, many to those same baby boomers that we spoke of earlier, the younger siblings to Generation X. They are the first generation of the digital age. These are the latte-swilling, self-absorbed, narcissist hipsters that are single-handedly ruining everything that is good in America and expecting a participation trophy for it.
I'm a millennial. We suck and we know it.
Except that it's a complete load of crap.
Okay, fair enough. But I've got 5 specific examples of things that really seem to have been ruined by millennials. Number 5 on the list is beer. Now, I don't drink beer, but a lot of people do, at least until millennials came along. Goldman Sachs recently downgraded the credit ratings of the Boston Beer Company and Constellation brands, 2 of the biggest beer distributors in the United States. This was done based on data that younger consumers are not drinking as much alcohol. And when they are, they're choosing wine and spirits, mixed drinks, over beer. Beer sales fell 1% from 2016 to 2017. Goldman Sachs is estimating that beer sales could fall another 1% by the end of 2017. Millennials are killing beer.
Which I'm sorry to say is a punch-drunk load of crap. According to the Brewers Association of America, craft breweries have grown at unprecedented rates in the last 7 years. In 2009, there were around 1,600 individual breweries in the United States. By the end of 2016, that number had skyrocketed to over 5,000. They account for over 130,000 jobs and counting. If the beer market were so bad, why would private equity investors be seeking out small craft brewers? If it were so bad, why would the big hitters like A&B InBev and Constellation Brands be buying up regional breweries at a record pace? Remember that 1% decline in sales that he mentioned a minute ago? In 2016, the beer industry in America netted $1.8 billion in sales. That's billion with a B. 1% of that is $18 million. That's less than the combined salary of every beer CEO put together. A proverbial drop in the keg. Sorry, but millennials are not killing the beer industry. It's doing just fine.
Maybe. I mean, again, I don't drink, so that might not be the best example for me to use.
What else you want to complain about?
How about this? Number 4, millennials are ruining baby names. Millennials seem to be giving their kids stranger and stranger names. They're actually naming their children things like Legendary, Sadman, and Lux. We've seen the rise of names like Sage, Hashtag, Cherry Blue, and statistics show that unusual baby names have risen an average of 75% over the last 7 years. You don't think that millennials are ruining baby names? Why don't you ask Atticus, North, or Beckett. Sure, when they become adults, they'll tell you. It seems like the tried and true baby names like John, Jennifer, William, or Susan have gone by the wayside. Millennials are ruining baby names.
And that is a diaper load of crap. The unusual baby names that millennials seem to have conjured up are really not all that different than the unusual names conjured up by the previous generations. Do you remember that greatest generation I mentioned? Well, their parents cooked up such amazing names as Wilbur, Gertrude, Elmer, and Bertha. They themselves came up with some goofy names for the baby boomers like Melody, Wendell, Shirlene, and one of my all-time favorites, Guy. Speaking of which, any of you boomers watching this right now want to explain to me why some of us Gen Xers ended up with names like Genevieve, Rain, with an E, Dharma, or Laszlo? Sorry to tell you this, but millennials do not corner the market on unusual names.
Yeah, alright, whatever. Well, how about this? Number 3 thing, and this is something I do know a little bit about, millennials are ruining the car industry. Millennials in their 20s are driving an average of 20% less than their parents did when they were in their 20s. The number of miles that they drive when they do drive also continues to decline. Younger people just don't need to go as many places to get things as their parents did. They live such a connected lifestyle that the idea of owning a car so you can drive to a store and buy something is irrelevant in the world of Amazon and iPhones. I mean, less drivers on the road may sound like a good thing when you're talking about traffic and congestion, but I'm pretty sure it spells doom for the auto industry.
And that is a full tank of crap. NPR reported this week that as millennials age, they are actually buying more SUVs to commute to their homes in the suburbs where they're supposedly not buying homes. Auto Trader magazine reported that while massive college debt originally kept the millennials out of the car buying market, that's now changing. In 2016, millennials accounted for 30% of automotive sales, and that's just new cars. An economist with Ford Motor Company pointed to millennials as the reason for the boost in their SUV sales. Millennials account for 40% of Ford's overall car buying. Did I mention that U.S. vehicle sales total 17.5 million cars last year? And that is the 5th straight record-breaking year in a row. Tell me again how millennials are killing cars.
You know, economics sucks. As a matter of fact, I may have to do a video about economics next time. But let me get back to these annoying millennials. The number 2 thing on my list that millennials are really ruining is marriage. Bowling Green State University set out to compare the marrying habits of baby boomers when they were aged 25 to 34 versus the millennials today of the same age. They found that in 1980, 66% of that age group had gotten married. In 2015, that number was less than 40%. Millennials aged 25 to 34 seem to reject traditional marriage outright. They see the notion of marriage as an outdated institution. They're living at home longer with their parents and grandparents. There was even a piece in Time magazine recently titled, "Why 25% of Millennials Will Never Get Married." This trend continues with millennials.
Okay, let me stop you there before you hyperventilate. Yes, millennials' attitudes towards traditional marriage are indeed shifting, but the definition of traditional marriage has been somewhat fluid over the last 100 years. In the early history of this country, marriages were a necessity. Different cultures around the world still have arranged marriages. Sure, it's easy to look at statistics and say that millennials are lagging behind their baby boomer parents in marriage rates. However, they are still beating out their Gen X siblings and baby boomer parents in one very important category: divorce. Sure, baby boomers and Gen Xers were all too happy to tie the knot, but baby boomers hold the all-time record for divorce rates in America. Divorce absolutely skyrocketed in the 1970s and 1980s. My parents split in 1978 when I was 3. And while the older of us Gen Xers have seen some relatively high divorce rates earlier, those millennials that have taken the plunge so far tend to stay together. It's been forecasted that better than 2/3 of millennials that choose to marry will never divorce. Tell me again how that's ruining anything.
Tell me again why I brought you into this video. All right, Professor, I get it. So, millennials may not be single-handedly dismantling society, but you cannot deny that millennials are ruining the number one thing on my list, something very near and dear to my heart, and that's music. I'm sorry, kids, but your music sucks. Look, I don't know anything about pop music, R&B, Katy Perry, Bruno Mars, hip-hop. The one thing I do know is rock. And the alternative garbage that you guys are cranking out trying to claim it's rock? What are you thinking? Vampire Weekend? The War on Drugs? M83? Arctic Monkeys? All of these hipster bands with synthesized pop music rhythm and whiny lead singers crying about existential crisis. And they're paraded around like they are the new rock music. I can't find a single quote-unquote rock station on the radio anymore. It's just insane. So how about that one? You telling me that you like any of this music that the millennials are putting out? Yeah? Come on, out with it.
I don't really know if I'm qualified to answer this. Oh, for God's sake, give me that camera. Hey, millennials, guess what? Your music does suck. Rock? You got the stones to call any of those bands he just named rock? No, sorry. You do not get to try and evolve rock into this watered-down, sappy, hipster alternative crap. Weezer is gone. Cage the Elephant has been cloned into this same cookie-cutter, whiny claptrap. There is no way we can accept that you have not ruined music. You want to talk about actual rock bands from the new generation? How about Avenged Sevenfold? How about Bullet for My Valentine? How about Volbeat, Disturbed, Five Finger Death Punch? Hell, I'll take Foo Fighters or 3 Days Grace any day over what these punks are trying to call rock music. Hollywood Undead is more of a rock band than anything that is on the Billboard rock chart right now. Now see, that wasn't so hard, was it? I swear I need to get my act together and get some real music on this channel. Later, millennials.
Well, there you have it, I guess. Well, if you think I'm on point with my complaints about millennials, tell me in the comments section below. If I'm completely off base, well, go ahead and comment that too, but be prepared for an argument. Either way, I appreciate you guys taking a couple of minutes out of your day to talk about these things that are on my mind. If you think I did a good job, please consider subscribing and coming along. Maybe like and share this video. Ooh, share the video with a millennial, see if it annoys them. As always, my friends, I thank you so much for watching. I'll see you on the road.